Good morning. My name is Greg Nosan. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a worship associate of this congregation, Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. Welcome. I'm both delighted and grateful to be here with you. We come here from different places, different religions and different backgrounds, and we have different beliefs. We come for different reasons: to find community, to speak personal and spiritual truths, to nurture heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and to transform the world. We hope you'll find connection, courage, inspiration, and love here. Whoever you are, whatever your background, whomever you love, know that you're welcome here. We especially welcome any guests who are worshiping with us for the first time today, either here in person or online. If you're interested in more information about our congregation, we invite you to fill out one of the guest cards in the pew rack in front of you. You can place that card in the offering plate when it comes around later in the service, and we'll be able to reach out to you and answer any questions you might have about us. If you're watching remotely, we invite you to visit our website at uucleveland.org or just send us an email. You'll also notice that there's a QR code on the back of your order of service, which will take you to our contact tracing form. Please take a minute before you leave today to fill out that form. It's very simple and takes only a few moments, and you can complete it at home as well, if you prefer. We're now going to enter into sacred time and space, so I'll remind you to please take a moment to set any of your electronic devices to worship mode. We welcome Stella Iglesias to be our Chalice lighter today. Stella's a sophomore this year, and she's a member of the UU Youth Choir. Welcome, Stella, and thank you. Please join me in reading the words of our chalice lighting, which you can find on the yellow card in the pew rack. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Randy. My pronouns are they, them, and I am so excited to be with you in worship today, whether you're here in person or online. And I invite us to hear these words from Reverend David Usher. Because we are finite, we lift up our eyes to the infinite sky and feel wonder and awe. Because we have stumbled, we take the tender hand which beckons us to rise and feel strength and reassurance. Because we are lonely, we reach out to those around us and feel warmth and acceptance. And because we are human, we do all of these things and in one another's presence feel the presence of the divine. May we be attuned to that presence as we worship together this morning. We are going to sing together hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us. But before we do that, I invite you to take a moment to greet one another. And if there's somebody that you don't recognize, make a special point to say hello to them. They may have been here longer than you. You never know. We come now to the point in our service. It's a little funny on the microphone today. I'm not sure why. We'll figure it out. But we come now to the point in our service where we share our joys and concerns with one another. I'll remind you that the book is here next to the bowl in the morning when you come in if there's something you'd like to share with the congregation. And if you're joining us online, you can put any joys or concerns that you would like to share in the comments below. Today we celebrate that last Tuesday, December 6th, Greater Cleveland congregations held a justice action at Olivet Institutional Baptist Church and also via Zoom. This meeting focused on reforming juvenile bindover, which is when children are tried and punished as adults. And we are happy to recognize that over 30 people from UUCC were in attendance at that action, so well done, and we celebrate that. We also place a stone of grief this week because Walter Murrell died earlier this week after lengthy health challenges. His wife Helen and Walter's family will have a small private funeral, but our care goes out to Helen and the rest of Walter's family during this time of grief. We also grieve that Betty Root died on Monday at the age of 92. We are going to celebrate Betty's life and legacy with a time of storytelling on Saturday, January 4th, followed by a potluck. There will be more news about that, but we grieve the loss of Betty Root to our community. We send continued healing thoughts for Mary Ellen McNulty, who is recovering from a bout with pneumonia. Our care and love go out to Mary Ellen. And we place a stone of prayer for safe takeoffs and landings for Duncan Sanford, who is deployed on the USS Nimitz somewhere in the Western Pacific. Safety for Duncan. What other joys or concerns do you carry with you today? If you'd like to come forward and place a stone in the water to represent them, I invite you to do so at this time. We place a stone for those joys or concerns that may have been shared online today. And a final stone for those things that we carry with us that may not have a way to be expressed just yet.
Well, good morning, everyone. Have you noticed the beautiful tree here in the corner? It is worth saying this is, of course, a wonderful symbol of light and things that are brought to our sanctuary in this season, but also it is the instantiation of a day filled with fellowship and camaraderie and hot chocolates, and both of those parts are important. Did you ever play the quiet game? Today is our breakfast. I'm noticing we have fewer of our youngest people around, but often a game you play with the littles. You know, this is an important game, because quiet is important. And what does quiet need more than competition? I mean, obviously, we should compete over this. The quiet game, of course, though, it's a learning moment, right? This is how we learn to be comfortable with silence, to be okay with the fact that we're going to be together as a group and learn to be silent. But maybe there's something more, or not even more, but there's just a deeper level to what it means to be quiet together. This is a thing that I actually feel like we kind of learned much more of recently with our experience with the pandemic. Did everyone notice that once we were all wearing masks all the time? Right, one of the first things we lost is all of that stuff in communication that a face does. Suddenly faces were gone. I still have this experience when I'll see people in public and I'm like, I think I know that person, but I can't be 100% sure. To realize that is to realize that so much of our communication isn't about the words, it's not about the talking, it's about the interconnection, this physical presence, this thing that happens. So, I'm going to invite all of us into a practice today. We're going to redo our greeting our neighbor time. We're going to start this over again. So if everyone would like to stand for our greeting our neighbor time. But crucial limitation now. We're going to play the quiet game. And let everyone to greet your neighbor, no words. All right, we've done pretty good, so I'm going to allow you, are you ready for this? One word each. Hello. Perfect. One word each. One word each. Hold it. So words don't do everything. They do some things. Everyone's welcome to sit back down. I hope you feel extra greeted this morning after that experience. My experience with this for myself was reflecting on that this week. When I was just finishing up high school, part of a church group I was in that was actually connected to like some diplomacy policy things in South Florida, because this was right after Fidel Castro had finally opened up travel to Cuba. So a group went to Cuba as sort of a diplomatic mission thing. And so we were there in like the westernmost province in sort of a small town. And even if you have taken some high school Spanish, that equips you in zero ways to communicate with people who are living in a place like Cuba. So all of us were there, and there was no way to communicate with the people we were there to connect with. And as a young person at the time, it was a real lesson in how do you communicate things to other people when you don't have words. You can smile. You can just sit next to somebody. There was a lot of, this was a surprising thing to me, there was a lot of gift giving. A lot of even the small things to affirm the things that are in place. All of this is to say, sometimes we get hung up on words. Sometimes our desire to communicate through words alone forces us into this space and doesn't allow us to realize all of the other rich things that are going on when we are there to connect with other people. So maybe not always in perfect silence, maybe not always in complete quietude. We can think and attend to some of the ways that we communicate, not only in words.
The Article 2 Study Commission is charged to review Article 2 of the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws and propose any revisions that will enable our association, our member congregations, and our covenanted communities to be a relevant and powerful voice for spiritual and moral growth, healing, and justice. Proposed changes should articulate core UU theological values. The board believes that one value shared widely among UUs is love. The Commission on Appraisal cites Robert Miller's study of Unitarian Universalism, stating, UUs ranked love more highly than did respondents from other groups, religious and non-religious. Dr. Cornell West says that justice is what love looks like in public. Our commitment to personal, institutional, and cultural change rooted in anti-oppression, anti-racism, and multiculturalism is love in action and should be centered in any revision of Article 2. The new principles and purposes should guide us in the transformation of ourselves, our communities, and our faith into active networks of collective care, restoration, and justice. The principles and purposes you will prepare should be a living document that challenges Unitarian Universalists to place the liberation of all, in all its dimensions, at the center of our lives. Our offering recipient today is 9 to 5. Founded in Boston in 1973 and headquartered here in Cleveland from 1977 to 93, 9 to 5 is the largest membership organization of working women in the United States. While its efforts famously inspired the hit 1981 movie 9 to 5, starring Jane Fonda, Dolly Parton, and Lily Tomlin, the group has evolved over the decades with a focus on social justice that's fueled by love, dedication, and a commitment to fighting for basic human rights for low-wage working women of color and their families. They're still at the forefront fighting for economic justice, gender justice, racial justice, and democracy. I ask today that you support the work of 9 to 5 by giving away that's significant to you, either by placing your offering in the plate as it's passed around or by using Cash App. Our handle is $, all caps, UUCC 44122. Be sure to include the words 12/plate in the for line of the app.
lights for all people. We welcome friends from far and from near. We fight for those whose voices are silenced, resounding in faith until we are free. We dream a world of justice and kindness. We build a bridge, creating new paths. We march with joy. Let's all walk together, embracing each one. We boldly stand.
Thank you, choir. You know, we have a really wonderful process here that you get to identify how we share our resources with the wider world. Most of the organizations that we share our plate with are suggestions that you make, and there's a form online for you to do that. There's a link on the website. If you ever have trouble finding it, please email me. But I'm grateful to know what you care about so that as a congregation we can support those things together. And we support them meaningfully. We just got a letter from the Kids Book Bank, grateful for our gift of $642 from last month. Thanks to you, many, many kids are hugging their first books they can call their own. We hope it warms your heart knowing that together we are filling the bookshelves and minds of our young children. You make this possible. Just as we make possible today the work of 9 to 5, and next week we'll be making possible other work out in the larger world. So thank you for your enthusiasm for sharing our gifts more widely in the community. So I invite you to read along with me the acceptance of gifts on your yellow pew card. We offer these gifts with gratitude, and we acknowledge the constant gifts of time, talent, and treasure that strengthen and nourish this congregation as a reflection of our commitment to community within and without, our purposeful spirituality that is ever searching and growing, and our intentional actions that lead to greater justice in our congregation, our city, our nation, and our world. Can I steal one of these? I mean, not steal, borrow, briefly, like for a limited period of time. Borrow sounds fine. Do you know anyone who owns a pet? Who owns a pet? Who lives in a house with a pet, maybe? Maybe we don't always think of owning our pets. Maybe sometimes they own us a little bit. How do you know that someone cares for the pet that they share a house with? How do you know they care for that pet? The pet is happy. I'll let you say it like this so that people online.
It's happy.
The pet is happy. We know.
My Cavachon follows me around everywhere I go, including to bed.
Okay, so the pet's behavior. If the pet is following you around, we're shrugging because the microphone seems to be having challenges. Should I check the light? I think I will. Whoop. We just won't worry about that one today. So if the pet is happy, if the pet follows the human around, if the non-human animal follows the human animal around, then we know that there's care.
When I open her crate in the morning, our dog sort of turns over so that I can pet her tummy.
So you're giving testimony that you care for the animal you share your house with.
Opens her vulnerable part to me.
The pet is vulnerable. I see. Can we pass this microphone down to?
Thanks, Mom. When the pet feels comfortable and in some cases wags its tail or purrs if it's a cat, like around the human or other people.
Non-humans.
Non-humans.
Was there another hand right over here? Oh, purring. Okay.
If your pet is healthy.
So being able to tell. So it's all about the other.
When they're constantly showing you photos of them.
Oh, so you know that somebody cares for their pet if they are constantly showing you photos.
When the Christmas card that we get from the pet tells us what a great year they had.
That's great. So let's think about our relationships with other human animals. How do you know that your friend cares for you?
They call you or they text you.
They call or text. Can we pass this over to Mika again? And then I'm going to back over.
When they listen to you and they feel like, and you feel safe around them and they feel safe around you.
Who else? How do you know that your friend cares about you?
They invite you for coffee at Van Aken.
No actual advertising dollars are going to.
When your friend meets your eyes, eye to eye.
Okay, one more.
They might tell you that they care for you.
They might tell you that they care for you, but it sounds like there are lots of other behaviors that help back that up.
You may have not seen each other for a while, but you pick up where you left off. There's no resentment that you haven't maybe kept in touch for whatever reason.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, a lot of behaviors that we can pick up on and say, you know what? I think this person actually cares about me because I see it in all of these things that they do. And maybe we can look at the lives of non-human animals in people's lives and say, they must care for their pet because their pet is behaving in this way. But there's got to be something that human animal is doing in the relationship with the non-human animal. There's some actions there that lead to that personality, that sense of being at peace. I see a big hand up here, so I'm going to go ahead. That was because that was an enthusiastic hand.
I'm going for the basic, you feed them.
If you care for them, your behavior is you feed that either the non-human animal or the human animal. That's an expression of care. So how do you know that somebody cares about their UU values? Because that's kind of what we have been talking about with the conversation about Article 2 is our Unitarian Universalist values and how our principles might show up in our lives. And there's some built-in kind of things that say that we're supposed to reevaluate these every so often. They're not intended to be set in stone for all time. And so occasionally we're supposed to go back and say, do these principles, do these things that we're saying Unitarian Universalism is still make sense? Is this accurate? Is it effective? Does it do for us as Unitarian Universalists what we need those principles to do? And so we heard in our reading what a few years ago, what the UUA board gave in part as a charge to this study commission, so that reading those principles should guide us in the transformation of ourselves and our communities and our faith into active networks of collective care, restoration, and justice. It casts a vision for who we can be. And this conversation has been going on for a couple of years. Some of you have mentioned that you have no idea that there was an Article 2 study commission going on, and this may be the first time some of you are hearing about it. But in this process, there has been a group of people from various backgrounds who are Unitarian Universalist, that they have in common, and they have been exploring what it might look like for us to rewrite Article 2, which is where our principles and purposes reside. It doesn't change the power or the authority of the Unitarian Universalist Association. It changes the language that we use to talk about what Unitarian Universalism is. And as many of you know from participating in some of those feedback sessions, the principles as we know them are not showing up in the draft of Article 2. They're using a different framework. They're talking about what we value as Unitarian Universalists and what behavior would demonstrate that value. So if we say we value justice, what is the behavior that would reflect that we value justice? Because we can say we really, really think highly of justice and then not do anything in the world that reflects that. And what people will know is that we are people who say we value justice, but they won't know that we value justice. So I know that some of you have asked about my recent trip to Peru, and I wrote a reflection about this, but one of the things that really stood out to me was when the temples were built, by the time they were putting stones together and building a temple in the Incan Empire, they knew why they were building it. They knew exactly what was important to them. They knew that they needed to see where the sun was going to be at certain times of the year. They knew that they needed to have a certain view of the sky. They knew that they needed that temple to reflect something very specific about their spirituality. And so our temple of Unitarian Universalism is something that has been built on a foundation of values. Those values have been expressed in the principles that we have. That's the thing that we supposedly know first. We know what we value, and then we build the faith tradition up from there. But we've always had some challenges defining Unitarian Universalism. It hasn't been as clear as we need to know where the sun is going to be on the solstices, and we're going to build this thing at this height with this view. We haven't always agreed about what our foundation is. Even as far back as 1979, Reverend Eugene Pickett commented on something lacking in Unitarian Universalism. He wrote, "The deeper malaise," oh, are we a people of malaise? "The deeper malaise lies in our confusion as to what word we have to spread. The old watchwords of liberalism, freedom, reason, tolerance, worthy though they may be, are simply not catching the imagination of the contemporary world. They describe a process for approaching the religious depths, but they testify to no intimate acquaintance with the depths themselves. If we are ever to speak to a new age, we must supplement our seeking with some profound religious finds." That was in 1979. Have we made some profound religious finds in our seeking over the last few decades that we can share with the world? Or are we talking about a way to approach the depths without really ever going deep? And I can't answer that for us collectively, because I think as individuals, we're in a lot of different places in that regard. Some of us might just skip along the surface, and some of us might really go deep with things. So when we are talking about redefining Article 2 and our values and our principles, we're talking about what is going to help us collectively go deeper so that the way that we live in the world and the behavior that people see gives them no doubt as to what we believe in, as to what we value. And I say what we believe in. Really, we believe in lots of different things. That's almost creedal language, right? That's what a lot of religions have. Everybody stands up and says together, I believe whatever it is. We don't do that because we have lots of different beliefs. One of the reasons we might think about changing our principles, though, is that we sometimes treat them like a creed. What's a Unitarian Universalist? Well, Unitarian Universalists believe that. Wait, that's not what we say. We covenant to affirm and promote certain things. We say, regardless of what I believe, I'm going to make this mutual promise with you, and together we are going to agree and promote in the world that every person has inherent worth and dignity. And I might believe that they have that inherent worth and dignity because God gave it to them. And you might believe that they have inherent worth and dignity for some other reason, but that doesn't matter. What we're going to agree on is that we affirm and promote in the world these things. So one of the reasons we might look at changing our principles is we get a little bit creedal with them and we start thinking of them as common beliefs. And what do we have to do with beliefs? Nothing really. We just believe them, right? I believe everybody has inherent worth and dignity, period. Let's move on with our day. But I'm going to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Well, now you're asking something of me. And we don't always think of our principles that way. So when we think about Article 2, if we're going to be really explicit and say, here's the thing we value, and here's what we commit to do as a reflection of that value, it's a little more explicit, whereas our principles disguise it a little bit. The other thing some people have said is that our principles are maybe a little bit incomplete. Maybe they emphasize the individual a great deal, and it's only tagged on at the end that we need each other, that we're interdependent with one another, that there's power in community. And individualism has been a challenge for Unitarianism and Universalism for a long, long, long time. Before we were Unitarian Universalists, it was a challenge. So maybe different language would reflect the fact that we need one another as community, and that we're not just a bunch of individuals, but we also have a collective identity with one another. So when I ask about our principles, a lot of times we look at that banner back on the wall, and that banner back on the wall is an illustration of why we might want to change our principles too. Because if I say that the fourth principle of Unitarian Universalism is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and we look back there and say we're going to grow by exploring ideas and values, we've changed the language a little bit. Because a free and responsible search for truth and meaning may not make sense to people of all ages that we want to participate in Unitarian Universalism. So we say, well, what will make sense? We're going to grow by exploring ideas and values, which is not the same as a responsible search for truth and meaning. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning has some obligation to it. My search for truth and meaning is free, but also it matters how it affects everybody around me. It's not just about me. It's a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So if we can't capture that in simple language that speaks to everybody, maybe there's a problem with the way that we are stating that principle. Not a problem with having a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, but a problem with how we express it clearly so that everybody understands it the same way. So when we think about our principles as they are, what are some of the values that rise up from that? Our second principle is a good example. Up there it says offer fair and kind treatment to everybody, but the values that are kind of explicitly in the language of Article 2 right now says that we foster justice, equity, and compassion in our human relationships. So justice and equity and compassion are right there as values that we share as Unitarian Universalists. What are some other values that you think we have in common as Unitarian Universalists? And maybe it's a word in our current principles. A lot of thoughtful faces. Oh, right here.
Tolerance.
Tolerance is something we might share in common, and we might think, how would we demonstrate that in the world? I saw another hand.
Inquiry.
Inquiry. Maybe that's something that we have in common as a value, that as Unitarian Universalists, we care about inquiry. And how do we reflect that in the way that we behave? Because all of our values have ways that we can live them out. Yes, you are so on it today.
Open-mindedness.
We value diversity and celebrate it.
Inclusion.
Acceptance of who you are because you are who you are.
Codependency.
Codependency. Is that a synonym for interdependent, or is that something else? Okay. See, sometimes we value things that we might not even want to admit that we value. And so I want to acknowledge that as Unitarian Universalists, one of the things that I think we lift up as a value a lot of times is intellectualism. We lift up being smart as a value. And that's nowhere in any of our principles, that we really, really value being smart. But there are a lot of people who walk into a UU space and think, well, I do not have enough degrees to be in this community. Because as a culture, we lift that up as something that we value.
I think we value curiosity, and so we assume that intellectual people are curious, but it's a misconnection.
Yeah, that's a good point. And sometimes our values are in conflict with each other too, because we want to be inclusive and we want to be welcoming, and we also might have some values that challenge that. I personally have a value of being on time to things. That's I can probably trace back where that comes from. I have a value of being attentive to when I'm supposed to be someplace, to the point that I will get places early if I can most of the time. But sometimes there are other values that I have that come in conflict with that. And maybe there's an opportunity to provide care for someone that means that I've got to make a phone call and say, listen, I'm running late. I'll be there at such and such a time, and I can still be courteous, because being courteous is another thing that I value. But, there might be some times when our values are not compatible with each other, and we have to really weigh them. And so what Article 2 is trying to do, what our covenant tries to do, our current Article 2 tries to say, here are the things that are more important than the other stuff that we might want to easily live into in our lives. We might want to easily live into an attitude that says, everyone is welcome. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter how you express it. We want you to be welcome in our community. And people who have never experienced any kind of abusive dynamic in a community might say, that sounds wonderful and lovely. And yet, in order to define who we are, we have to have some boundaries. We have to say, there are some behaviors that are not appropriate in our community. And there are some beliefs that honestly are not compatible with how we define ourselves as Unitarian Universalists. We can be welcoming and accepting of people and still say, if you come in here with a lot of racist ideas, it's not going to fit. That's just not who we are. We have a boundary that says this is outside of our identity. And so we say Unitarian Universalists can believe whatever they want, but that's kind of a theological statement. It's not really that you can believe whatever you want and be compatible with Unitarian Universalist values. So what we are going to do after the service today, we have a fantastic meal prepared. I'll tell you a little more about that. Harry's kitchen crew has been hard at work all morning. But we are going to spend some time talking about what our values as a community might be. And I'm going to share with you what the Article 2 Commission has said. This is going to be written down for you downstairs. You'll see it, and you'll be able to reflect on it just by reading it over. What we're not going to do today is provide feedback about the Article 2 language, and I'll tell you why. All of that feedback has been happening for months, and now they are reviewing all of that feedback and rewriting it. And so we've had some feedback sessions here. We've had a time for people. They've been having Zoom conversations for months. They had a lot of feedback sessions at General Assembly. And now they are taking all of that feedback and reviewing, recreating the version of it that we have seen. Even the version of it that I'm going to share today is obsolete already, because they're going to be re-presenting it to us. And I think that's going to be in January. And so in January, we'll have a sense of what that Article 2 language is going to be. At this year's General Assembly, we're going to be able to look at it and vote as Unitarian Universalists. We'll vote on whether we want to vote on that language next General Assembly. That's the process. We're going to vote this year on whether to vote on it next year. So if you are interested in being a delegate for General Assembly, I just want to say, sign on early, because there will be some meetings and conversations leading up to General Assembly that will help you get familiar with a lot of these issues, and it'll help you prepare. So you're not just walking in and getting hit with all of these ideas right at General Assembly. But if you sign in early and say, okay, I'm wanting to be a delegate this year, then you'll have an opportunity to be prepared for that. And we have space for, 7 delegates, I think, for this congregation. And we didn't come close to that threshold last year. So it's something you might want to consider. But here are the values that they have lifted up. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all people thrive, and therefore we covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression within individuals and our institutions, and we are accountable to each other for this work. Sounds a lot like the 8th principle that we approved in May. Another value is generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope, and so we covenant, we make a mutual promise to freely share our faith, presence, and resources. We value evolution. This is a word that a lot of people have found challenging. Maybe we are changing that word, but essentially what they mean by evolution as a value is that we adapt to the changing world. And so we covenant to collectively transform, grow spiritually and ethically. We value pluralism, so we celebrate that we are all sacred beings in diverse culture and theology and experiences, so we covenant to learn from one another and openly explore the depth and breadth of our many wisdoms, so we can embrace our differences with love and curiosity and respect. We value equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with dignity and worthiness. That's some other language that people pushed back on, but equity is something that we might reflect by a covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain a fully inclusive and accessible community of communities. And then one of the values they lifted up was interdependence. We honor the sacred, interdependent web of all existence. That sounds like one of our principles that is currently articulated. So we covenant to care for and respect the earth and all beings by fostering relationships of mutuality. We work to repair the bonds we have broken. So our work today is not to decide whether we agree with those values, but to use this as a possible framework, because we're talking about a congregational covenant. So we might think about what at UUCC,
what are our shared values? And we might start from here as a starting point, but there might be other things. There might be some things that we have shared values around that we would reflect with some specific behaviors. If we value this thing, then we can promise to one another, here's how we will behave in our relationships with each other. And that's what we're going to be talking about in our congregational conversation in just a minute. So, the covenant that we have are the actions that we commit to reflect our values. How are we going to be the embodiment of our values? And if we do that well enough, if we manifest the things that we care about well enough in the world, no one will ever have to ask you what Unitarian Universalists believe. Because they will see what you do in the world and they will say, why do you do that? And you say, because I'm a Unitarian Universalist. And they'll say, oh, because they will know by your actions what you care about. And maybe centering love in action is something that can be healthy for all of us as we go into the holiday seasons especially. How can we center love in action in the way that we go about our lives? It would be a really profound change for us, perhaps. What does that look like as a priority? Maybe we will have the courage to find out what that looks like. We are going to sing together, Answering the Call of Love. And I would suggest that you could open your hymnals for most of this, but we're changing the lyrics a little bit of this. So I encourage you to use your orders of service. The reason we're changing the lyrics is because the original lyrics of Standing on the Side of Love can be heard as ableist. If you can't physically stand in some way, maybe you hear these words as saying that you are in some way less than. And because of our values as Unitarian Universalists, because we have been trying to listen better to the voices of those who experience harm, we are changing these lyrics with the blessing of the original author of the lyrics, because the lyrics weren't intended to be exclusionary. And you may think that's a silly complaint to say, well, you know, it's a metaphor, right? Well, sure, of course. But if it's a harmful metaphor that people experience some kind of exclusion because of it, then it's an easy thing for us to say, well, we'll just sing different words then. We can do that. We don't have to push back and say, you're not really hurt by us singing this, because we don't know what their experience is. So if we think about it not in terms of our personal preferences, but in terms of what might be best for the entire community, then it's an easy thing for us to rise in body or spirit now and sing together, Answering the Call of Love. And if you really, really are insistent on the original lyrics, you can open up your hymnal and sing them. But hopefully we will all sing together, Answering the Call of Love. Let's rise in body or spirit.
Thank you.
It is the holiday season. I invite you to sit down while I tell you everything that's going to be happening. It's going to be in your weekly newsletter, so please do check those emails. On the 21st, we're going to have a special solstice ceremony. It's going to be a time of sharing solstice stories, short, 1 minute or so solstice stories. And if the weather allows, we're going to be outside around a beautiful fire pit. And there'll be some other elements to that ceremony that will make it meaningful. So I hope you'll be able to share that with us. On Christmas Eve, we're going to have one service. It's going to start technically at 6 o'clock, but we're going to have some amazing music beforehand that you'll probably want to be around for. So maybe plan to show up, between 5:30 and 6. I'm not sure exactly how many musicians we'll have, but talented people from this community. And we'll have our tableau. We'll go till 7-something, 7:15-ish, and then we'll have a time of appetizers and desserts afterward that Cliff Wire has been coordinating. So thank you to Cliff. I think he's downstairs with the kitchen crew right now, but he has arranged that time of fellowship afterwards. And then on Christmas Day, we will have a service, but it's going to be in the fellowship hall. We're going to set up a Zoom link instead of the live stream so that if people are at home and just need someplace to tune in and can't be here physically, then they'll be able to tune in and be connected with us in that way on Christmas Day. We're not expecting a huge crowd, but if you do want to bring some kind of food to share, then we'll spend some time afterwards in fellowship, and we'll just let that be a casual time. There will be worship, but not an order of service. We won't be collecting an offering that day. It'll just be a time for us to be in community together for those people who don't have another place that they would prefer to be on Christmas Day. We'll also have a service on New Year's Day, but that'll be in here. That'll be a regular worship service. Well, not regular. It's going to be amazing. But and then I'll just remind you that on January 8th, we're going to have another one of these meals after the service, and that's when we need as many people who are members of the congregation to stick around, because we'll be voting on whether to approve Reverend Christy Stewart as an affiliated community minister to add to our robust ministry team that we already have. Today, please remember that Harry's kitchen crew are volunteers. Be kind. They are a little shorthanded today because some people are traveling, so I think it's going to be amazing. They are going to bring salads out to the table because we have some food safety concerns still about COVID and all of that stuff. So go downstairs, sit down, find a seat. They will bring the salad to you, and then you'll be able to begin your conversations. There are table cards and stuff there for you to go ahead and start chatting with each other. And then after you finish your salad, you can come up and get the rest of the meal. If you are a member of the youth choir, I hope that you will head straight to room 107, and then after your rehearsal time, please do join us in the fellowship hall and get some food and participate in those conversations, because your voices are important in that conversation as well. I leave you with these words from Robin Shaw. As we extinguish our chalice today, still we will carry the joyful light of Unitarian Universalism within us. We shine our light on those around us by creating joy in our actions and our words. We shine our light on those around us by sharing through relationship and communication. We shine a light on those around us, finding joy through tough times, spreading joy with intention, and minding our impact. We shine a light on those around us by building beloved community, by caring for our interconnected web of life. So shine on, joyful light. Amen, and blessed be.
Please join me in extinguishing our chalice, using the words found on the yellow card in your pew rack. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.